All right, good morning. Thank you everyone for joining the NYISO's 2019 Summer Readiness Briefing. My name is Zach Hutchins, Media Relations Program Lead for the NYISO. Hopefully by now you've had time to read our press release. If not, it is available at www.nyiso.com along with a copy of today's presentation. A few quick housekeeping notes. For the benefit of everyone else on the call, please mute your line unless you're asking a question. And while we're talking about questions, if you can, please save them for the end. Finally, we did want everyone to know that we are recording today's call for internal purposes only. Presenting today's briefing is Wes Yeomans, Vice President of Operations for the NYISO. Wes will spend the next several minutes going over this year's summer readiness. With that, I welcome Wes Yeomans to the mic. Wes?
Sure. Thank you, and welcome everyone that dialed in. We appreciate your time. As you can see on your WebEx, I thought I would just review and spend a minute on last summer's hot weather operations. It was a fairly warm and hot summer last summer, in contrast to summer of 2017, which was mild and cool. But the actual ambient temperatures were above the 20-year averages for May, July, and August. And near average for June. We did have 19 days over 90 degrees Fahrenheit in Albany. So that's a lot of hot weather last summer. The total load, and load would be all of the electric use over those 4 months, was above our 50-50 forecast projection. Now the peak load, which would be the maximum in any 1 hour, different than the total load across 4 months, but the peak load itself was actually below the 50-50 projection for the 5th consecutive summer. Last summer, we projected a peak load of 32,904, and the actual peak load was 31,861 megawatts, which occurred on August 29th. Now, a couple reasons. It was hot that day, but we did have the utilities activate their demand response programs, and the New York ISO activated its demand response programs in New York City. We did have 6 days last summer with peak loads over 31,000 megawatts. Now moving on to this coming summer, let me just say a few words about our preparedness. And I think all of you know we do not own the generating assets. We do not own the transmission assets, but we are very much in the business of operating the electric transmission in New York State and scheduling the power flows on those transmission lines. But we have performed on-site visits of key generating stations to discuss maintenance, testing, and adequacy of fuel supplies for hot weather conditions this summer. We do in New York have an existing min oil burn procedures defined by the Reliability Council, which establishes fuel switching requirements at certain high load, electric load thresholds in New York City and Long Island to assure electric reliability in the event of a gas pipeline contingency. We've had coordination with the New York Electric Utilities, preventative transmission maintenance. So to the extent that the transmission system needs maintenance, we've really worked hard to schedule that and coordinate that with the New York Utilities in the spring time frame so that that transmission is available in the summer and so that we don't have unexpected forced outages on the transmission assets. And of course, we've completed our operator training and our operator training programs, which includes review and drills on non-emergency and emergency procedures. Just a little bit of review on the New York State fuel mix, and I will not go through all of these numbers. You can find these obviously on this slide, but in some of our other publications and documents. But at the highest level, the first large graph on the left is a New York State fuel capacity chart. You can see in the yellow we have 14% of the capacity in New York State is coming from nuclear power plants. At this point in time, we have 6 nuclear units that are commissioned in New York State. You will see then to the right of that big circle, a purple color, 49%. That's dual fuel capability. That's generation capacity that can run, operate on gas or oil. I'll offer that the great majority of time, gas is significantly cheaper than oil. So the great significant amount of time, that 49% of dual fuel capabilities operating on gas, not oil. There may be a few cold winter days in January where they switch over to oil, but the great majority of time where you see 49% dual fuel, you could say to yourself that's probably 95% gas. And then, of course, on the bottom you'll see gray, which is 10% gas only, and on the top of the chart you'll see a little bit of oil only and a little bit of coal across New York State. Moving to the right, the two smaller circles on the right, the upper is really upstate New York, and the lower graph is for downstate New York, which is downstate like Poughkeepsie and Kingston, Newburgh area, all the way to New York City and all the way to Long Island. But you can see the upstate zones. You see 27% in blue. That's hydro capacity. So you can say in upstate New York there is a lot of hydro capacity for upstate New York. 23% nuclear, that would be 4 of the 6 nuclear units in upstate. And then you'll see some dual fuel, some gas only, and some coal and oil. Moving to the bottom right circle, then this is very much a downstate fuel mix graph. The 8%, that's Indian Point 2 and 3. You see 70% dual fuel units on gas. That's a large percentage of the capacity's dual fuel capability. Again, I'll repeat that the great majority of time, those units are running on natural gas and not oil. And then you will see a little bit of gas only and a little bit of oil only on the chart. Turning the slide is our assessment or our projection for capacity margins for hot weather conditions. So if we estimate our summer peak for just predicted heat wave conditions, we're projecting that in our markets we have about 42,056 megawatts of capacity supply. That's made up primarily of generators in New York State, but it also includes capacity purchases from outside New York, like from Ontario, Quebec, New England, and PJM, and it includes demand response capacity resources. So there's 3 categories. The great majority of the 42,000 is from New York generators, but there are 3 categories of supplies. Then we look at 60 months of history and just come up with some projected average generator D-rate factors and apply that to the large generation fleet. So we say on average we might have 4,800 megawatts of D-rates. Who knows what will really happen this summer during heat wave conditions. It could be a little higher or it could be a little lower, but that's an average number that we look at with a historical basis. At this point in time, our peak load forecast is 32,382 megawatts. That's down about 500 megawatts from last year's forecast. That's primarily the result of a lot of additional energy efficiency and some conservation measures. And then we say we also do commit additional capacity every single day to be prepared for the loss of a large generator, and that amount is 2620. So if we take the supplies and the resources and compare those to the load and the requirements, our math results in about 2,200 megawatts of projected capacity margin. And again, you know, how the summer really goes, we might have a peak load higher than the 32,382. We might have less D rates. We might have more D rates. Well, time will tell, but we're projected to have about 2,200 megawatts of margin. Now, we do then on the bottom say to ourselves, geez, what if we were having what we call 90-10 conditions? So this would be once in a decade type heat wave conditions. And for that, we do think that there's, if it was, that would really mean it's very hot many days in a row, you know, maybe 99 or 100 degrees 5 days in a row. That's pretty rare. But it can happen, and if that were to happen, probably by about the 5th day of that heat wave, the peak load would be around 34,186 megawatts. And for expected performance of the infrastructure, we still think we would have a capacity margin, a positive surplus of 423 megawatts.